I'm Mason Mount. You're listening to the London is Blue podcast.
All right, Chelsea fans, welcome back to another episode of the London is Blue podcast. That's right, second episode of the week. Too much in the game against the Canaries to talk about, so we had to get back, do a little bit more, do a little bit of a deep dive into it. Brandon had commitments. He had to leave. Not dedicated, but Nick is here, and he is dedicated.
Something called work. I don't even know. It's really stupid.
I've heard of this before.
He's
right,
just a
but
slacker.
you know who did step up though? Wonderful super sub, Nizar Kinsella, back again for the second episode of the week. We are so overjoyed that you could spend a little bit more of your Sunday recording with us to dive deeper into some of these tough questions.
Yeah, I just like you guys too much. That's obviously where it is.
Definitely.
Well,
it's that.
We will repay it with a couple of rounds when we make it over to London in a couple weeks' time. So you can book that one in there.
I'm holding you to that.
All right. Well, before we dive into it, no new iTunes reviews or Patreon news because we were recording right after the first episode. But Nick, we do want to take 30 to 60 seconds just to remind everybody about the awesome discount codes going on from a few of our partners.
That's right. If you could support us and these wonderful sponsors, that would be great. A quick rundown would be London Pod at the code London Pod at World Soccer Shop will get you 10% off your entire order. Use that for free shipping or customization or to buy something extra. That's just on us. Talisman Caps, code London Blue 10, good for 10% off $35 or more. A cap like the one Dan and I are wearing on the YouTube version of this is what you could expect. Their quality, you should do that. And then finally, you're probably seeing it out there right now, but Classic Football Shirts having their sale of the year right now. We're here to support them. They've supported us, and we're going to do some fun stuff with them in London as well, most likely. So keep your eyes peeled for that. But yeah, support them. They're great. We like working with them. The end.
All right, so jumping in, part two, for those who are joining the podcast maybe for the first time, is where we go a little bit deeper into the match, answer a few more questions, maybe some spillover from stuff we couldn't fit into part one, and then also questions that come from our Discord community, which is exclusive to our Patreon members. So before we get to their questions, though, we do want to take into conversation a little bit of the thoughts around hashtag Pulisic Watch. Obviously, we are the American Chelsea podcast. We do like to talk about our Captain America at Statman Dave, talking about Christian created 2 chances, 1 assist in the first half versus the Canaries. No other player on the pitch created more, looking dangerous when he's come central. Naz, the people on our podcast have heard us talk ad nauseum about Christian, so we feel like it's important to get an outsider perspective on him as we jump into conversation on him. What were your thoughts about maybe Pulisic in this match, and then kind of pulling back how you thought about how he's contributed so far for Chelsea?
Yeah, well, in my opinion, I thought he was really dangerous. He's terrifying. Norwich, every time he's running at them, obviously got the assist from Mason Mount's goal. That shows exactly what he's about. But I liked how he could sort of cut inside. He doesn't always go around the back. I quite like that he offers that kind of different threat. He's definitely the fastest Chelsea player in the forward line as well. So if Chelsea find themselves pinned back, they can always, transition very quickly. And I think that's going to be important going forward. He's definitely one of the main men already. And he's just 20 years old. We talk about Mount being young. Obviously, Pulisic comes at a £58 million price tag, but he's got a lot of proving himself to do. I think first half he was absolutely brilliant. In general, just a threat every time Chelsea could get him on the ball, and he counterattacks absolutely fantastically. And he's gone up against really good fullbacks. The best positions at Norwich are their fullbacks. Max Aarons is fantastic, and Jamal Lewis on the other side, great. So it's not easy competition to come up against. I still think more broadly with Pulisic, I think he's sort of every single game he started very well, but he kind of fades. So he needs to kind of get used to the pace of the game and kind of do what he does, but for the whole match, because he's clearly showing he's good enough for the Premier League, but he's not showing it enough for me in a full 90 minutes. So he can get better. And I think that's a lot down to the pace. He's only playing a few games with these guys. They're all new to him. He seems to fit in with the group really well on a social level. He's taken really well to the young English guys. So he's hanging out with Mason Mount, Tammy Abraham, Fikayo Tomori. Those guys all sit next to each other on the bus. It's pretty cool. But in a playing point of view, that Chelsea needs to find the best way of using him, and he needs to find the best way to work with the players now. I think, when he's been on the left, I thought he connects really well with Emerson. Those two, playing 1-2s together, getting around people, I think it's fantastic. He played on the right this time, so it's a bit different. And he kind of cut across, moved into different areas, which was very interesting to see against Norwich. For me, I've not been, I've not been like totally convinced. I think that, he's not the finished article yet, and he needs a lot more work, just like Abraham does as well. So I'm very excited about Pulisic, but I want to see more, and I think we will see more. Because it's just so early. It's so early to make big conclusions. That anyone you'd speak to who's making grand statements about Pulisic being brilliant or rubbish or whatever, you can't do that right now.
Oh, what a reasoned take about where we are. I mean, I'm kind of the same way. I think Christian has shown spots where, I've really thought he was playing, incredibly. I thought his performance in the Super Cup against Liverpool was great. He clearly gave Robertson all he could handle and more. I think his transition to the right side today against Norwich was really interesting because it kind of provided him a different side to attack from, and you saw that his kind of second assist to his Azpilicueta. He drew in there, the center back and the left back, so that Azpilicueta had room to run behind. And you've seen a lot of crosses from Azpilicueta over the last 3 years get blocked because someone has always stayed out because the threat wasn't good enough to bring them together. So I thought that was a really promising sign. His pass to Mount was obviously great, and then Mount did fantastic to finish it. I knew when he came in that he was going to be more of an assist guy than a goal scorer, maybe out and out. He certainly has goals in his game, Dan, but I'm really pleased to see that his passing has been so far on point.
He definitely has offered plenty from an attacking perspective so far. I do think the point Naz has made about his conditioning and his ability to last a full 90 minutes is probably the biggest question that we have. I think Big Nash, one of our followers on Discord, was asking about the stamina piece, and that he doesn't necessarily look like he's been able to impact or last the 90 minutes. And I think the contextual piece also, this guy basically took no time off from playing for Dortmund at the end of the season once he got healthy, to heading into the U.S. men's national team to play a significant amount of minutes, to getting right into Chelsea and playing from Japan forward, and has been really relied upon with Willian not being healthy, Callum Hudson-Odoi not being healthy. And so there aren't necessarily a ton of options that Frank has had other than to trust the youth, trust Christian, and play him and see what he's able to offer. And I think Naz, what we're going to see is as he starts to contribute more, as he gets a chance to build that or acclimatize appropriately with this team, it may be the right side is where he ends up, kind of as the Pedro and Pulisic are kind of the options there. Willian and Callum become the options on the left, and we see that type of partnership, maybe with an Azpilicueta or even a Reece James when he gets healthy, start to form that give him the opportunity to play a little bit more 1-2 on the right-hand side.
Yeah, it could be. It's good to have that option that he can play either side, and I think that him and Callum Hudson-Odoi are probably the future of Chelsea. So we'll see. I think Callum likes playing on the left. That's his favourite position, but he's absolutely fine on the right as well. So yeah, they're so technically gifted. I probably underestimated Pulisic's technical ability. I think he's, the way he controls the ball at speed is unbelievable. And his use of the ball is very tidy as well. Usually with fast players, you kind of see that they give the ball away a little bit. Hazard maybe gave the ball away as well, or made the wrong decisions, but Pulisic doesn't really do that too much. He's very tidy as a winger, but I'd kind of like to see him be a bit less tidy, almost be a bit more unpredictable, like Hazard was and that sort of makes you decisive, because football's a game of deception, especially in the position of winger. So I want him to be able to take people on or choose different options, move on to his left foot, maybe take a shot on, sky it sometimes hit the back of the net. I think that's where his game could improve. Obviously, Pulisic, we want to see him do well for Chelsea, but he wants to do well for himself as well. How good can this guy be? He's also got Hudson-Odoi coming through. He wants to be better than Hudson-Odoi. I'm sure he does. And Hudson-Odoi is a huge threat. Who's going to be the star of this team? Maybe they both can be, but there's going to be one of them is going to start really shining and taking the spotlight away from the other. That's going to be fascinating later on in the season to see who's the main man. I think that a lot of US guys will focus on Pulisic. A lot of English guys will focus on Hudson-Odoi. They're the most exciting talents from each country, really.
Yeah, I was going to add to that. I think as I've watched Pulisic play for the national team, and he's obviously still very young, but I think when he really turned it on in the last World Cup qualifying cycle, that was infamously terrible from an ending standpoint. It was when he felt a sense of leadership, and he was our best player throughout that stretch. And so, if he has a couple of really good results, he scores a couple of goals, he has a couple of assists, and that to me, I think he'll turn it on from a leadership standpoint. He's not the most outspoken guy, he's not a rah-rah guy, but I think from a just leading by what he does on the pitch, I think I want to see him get there for this team, and that might not be this season. It could be a little ways out, but I know from watching him play for the U.S. men's national team that when he has that kind of responsibility, he usually rises to the occasion.
So I see in here as we transition, Nick, that you put an extra note about Tammy versus Giroud, and you were talking about it before we jumped into recording, that you wanted to go a little mano-a-mano, a little toe-to-toe with Naz on this conversation, kind of stemming out of our first part 1, which you haven't listened to, go back and hit that up, about Tammy versus Giroud in the starting lineup or their contribution. Like, you leave this off. You put a note and there's no additional context.
Yeah, well, I think Naz made some really good points in part 1 about, the style in which Tammy brings to the front line and how it may be more beneficial than the type of typical hold-up interchange striker that Giroud is. My thought all along has been that Giroud has a huge role to play in this team. And it's not because, in the first couple of games that Tammy wasn't scoring or whatever. I just think bringing people into the attack is something that we still need to do, a little bit reminiscent of last season. I think he is a wonderful hold-up striker, that being Giroud. I think he has a really good pass in him, and clearly, given his Europa League performances last year on the continent, he can still, bang in the goals. So just wanted to throw that out there, Naz, as you were kind of talking about Tammy's style being a little bit more get in behind, maybe a little bit quicker. He scores different types of goals. I think both of these guys, I kind of favor Giroud right now, but both of these guys have a role to play.
Yeah, well, let's talk about Giroud quickly first. Just we know what he's all about. He's a like you said, hold the ball up striker, World Cup winner, Europa League winner, massive player for Chelsea last season. But problem is he doesn't score enough goals. That's always going to be his problem every single time. Now he won the World Cup with France, and he had a team where they had Antoine Griezmann, Paul Pogba. There was goals from the wings. There's goals from everywhere. And that's fine when you're France, but when you're Chelsea, you need your striker to score goals because there's not enough goals from the wings. There's not enough goals from midfield. Now, Lampard is searching for those players to do that. Mason Mount is one of them, but Mason Mount's not ready. He's not Antoine Griezmann. Now, he will score goals, and I think he'll be Chelsea's top scorer, actually, Mason Mount, this season, possibly one of the top scorers anyway. That's my opinion. But yeah, I think that, Tammy, he will score more goals, and that's a big thing. And it's what Chelsea need right now is a striker that gets those goals. But you look at Derby County last season under Frank Lampard, and they had Jack Marriott up front. He's a very pacey striker, running behind, constantly threaten the centre backs with his running. Also, you've got this pressing game where you go in numbers, so they'll try to trap a player out who's not very technically gifted in the opposition lineup and try to steal a ball off him. We saw Mason Mount steal a ball off Ndidi against Leicester and score the goal. So that's exactly what Chelsea want to do, and I think Abraham is better at that than Olivier Giroud, just because he can get across the pitch better. And I think that you'll see Abraham playing actually the bigger games. So he played against Man United when Olivier Giroud could have played. And Giroud came in the Super Cup, but the Premier League is bigger than the Super Cup. So I think that this is what we're going to see. Maybe you'll see Giroud play against teams that have their backs to the walls, because it's good to have a big striker with great hold-up play when you're playing against somebody like Sheffield United maybe next week, who are not going to be very good in possession. Chelsea should have them pegged back for most of the game in their own half. But you're looking at Norwich, and Chelsea expected Norwich to hurt them, and they did. And Tammy Abraham's better to sort of be that counter-attacking player, but also to be a player when you're making quick transitions to sort of find a ball over the top when there's a bit more space to play with. And that's what the difference is. I really like Tammy Abraham. The only question mark is, can he do it at this level? And if he can, I think he'll beat Giroud. But we know Giroud can do it in the Premier League level. But can Tammy Abraham? Yes, he showed that against Norwich. Now he just needs to keep showing that. And I think he'll win the battle. I think he'll win.
Well, and that's kind of my point is, given that there's a lot of growth that needs to happen from every Chelsea player this year, not just the kind of youth, as we've affectionately termed them. I think Giroud still has a major point to play, right? I think when we're away at Man City, I don't know if that's the right game yet for Tammy, and it very well could be. It's not to say that he's not going to step up to the occasion, but I think there are going to be big inflection points in this season where we trust the steady hand of an Olivier Giroud, at least for this season, a guy who we know is defensively solid, who's going to be kind of the first man if we have to go zonal marking for whatever god-awful reason. And we know that he's going to hold the ball up, bring other people into attack. And if you trust the speed of Pulisic, if you trust the speed of Callum Hudson-Odoi and the finishing ability there, if you trust Mason Mount, then he almost serves as a conduit for those three players to really get into the game and provide a threat. And right now, I mean, only seeing one game where Tammy scored the goals and had really good hold-up play. Dan, I'm not 100% sure if that's Tammy's pure role right now.
Well, we'll get you onto the Tam train. Don't worry. Like, he's going to convince you. He's going to come good.
I'm excited when he does. I am.
I think that the point that Naz made, and it's how I feel about it, is that Tammy is the one who's going to be able to make those dynamic runs. He's the one when Mason is pushing forward as almost that second striker, kind of putting as like a top two and really trying to force the ball over. I have a greater trust in Tammy's ability to go cut through the center back pairing and to make himself available to score a goal versus Giroud, who takes a little bit of time to get up to top speed, at putting it as nicely as possible. So I think that's where, if we're going to move quick, if we're going to play as quickly as possible, if we want to make, decisive passes straight ahead and look to turn those into goals, that's where I don't see Giroud as being an individual that I trust to help execute that vision of play on the pitch. And I think that's where my concern would be about trusting Giroud in the Premier League, where we know that we're going to need 70 plus goals if we want to keep a top four spot to go back in the Champions League next season, regardless of what happens in the Champions League or in other competitions this year. I think Giroud will play a part. I think the other crazy thing is we're also not talking about Michy Naz, and obviously he had a good start in the midweek, and you got a chance to see him play for the Dev squad last week. Where do you see him kind of falling into all this? Because it seems like he's the one who maybe is on the outside looking in, and that's not where I imagine he would want to be at this point in his career either.
No, you're absolutely right. Let's be honest here. Michy's the third choice striker right now. Things can change. That's fine. It's a difficult situation to be in for any striker. Michy's the best finisher probably out of all of them, I think. Just a pure natural finisher. And I know a lot of people want to see a pure natural finisher up front for Chelsea, and I think that's what Chelsea are lacking. But there's a reason why managers keep not picking him. Now, you can say that maybe Conte's crazy, Sarri's crazy, Lampard's crazy, but it's been like successive managers that have thinks that Michy is falling short in a certain area, even when compared to a striker who played in the Championship last season in Tammy Abraham. And now, what is wrong with Michy? Why don't they start this great finisher who's kind of done it for Dortmund and stuff? And I think it's because his ability to hold up the ball is not good enough. His ability to carry out tactics isn't good enough. I think, when I speak to various Belgian journalists, they say that, managers don't feel like he applies himself well enough to the tactical side of the game. Now, physically, you look at him and he's ripped. He's in great shape. He's a great finisher. And he can be a great asset off the bench. And that's what, when Chelsea won the league, Michy had a huge contribution off the bench. And I'm not saying he's a bad player by any means. He's great, and helped Chelsea win the league. Scored the winning goal for the West Brom game, which you guys are probably going crazy, swinging Chelsea scarves around, chugging beers left, right, and centre. Now everyone Chelsea fan will love Michy forever for that moment. But he needs to show more to make it this top level. He's got so much to prove. So many other guys. Now he needs to show that he can hold up the ball, that he can understand Lampard's style of play. And for me, this is a make or break season for Michy, for Giroud as well. Like, will he stay at Chelsea much longer? This season, he's got to prove that. And he doesn't need to prove anything as a striker because he's achieved so much. But to stay at Chelsea, maybe he does. For Tammy Abraham, he needs to prove himself, and so does Michy. Now I feel like Michy will get some cup games. When it's 2 games a week, he'll get a few chances here and there, and he absolutely has to take every chance. He's got the hardest point to prove out of everyone. He's finding it the most difficult so far, and I think he might leave Chelsea in January if he doesn't prove himself. So this is his last chance. None of us know how it's going to go. Dortmund showed he could do it, but there's been many also failed experiments, with Chelsea and on loan as well. So this is the last chance to make it, probably at the top level, maybe ever. So it's a big season for him, and the transfer ban helps him.
Well, make sure you hit us up with your thoughts, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, Discord channel, thinking about where the battle stands between Tammy, Giroud, Michy, Naz versus Nick, all the hot debates going on. But let's transition a little bit to some of the midfield conversations. So CTX Blues fan, Tim Bakery, both asking questions about the midfield. So, obviously, we've waited for RLC to come back on the pitch. We also have Conte, who missed this game. Do we see, Nick, or where do you kind of land when it comes to what's the pairing or what's the perfect midfield going to be? Maybe post the international break, right? Because we got one game left before that. We'll get a break. We'll get to come back. That means everybody should be back to full fitness and available for selection. How are you feeling about our midfield right now, and what's the perfect combination and selection?
Oh, I mean, that's a really good question. I think if Ruben's healthy, we kind of talked about this a little bit last week. If Ruben's healthy, he'd be playing in a midfield 3, almost guaranteed. I think he is so dynamic, and we really started to see kind of what he has to bring to this team at the end of last season. Now, obviously, his injury in the final whistle on Haight was just brutal for this team because it did take away a key cog in that midfield wheel. But I think N'Golo Kante is an automatic if he's healthy. I think Jorginho has so far this season been playing pretty well, and I think based on the exercise against Norwich, Naz, that Kovacic is making his claim as well to play in this team. As far as depth goes, I'm not sure that Barkley is as good in a midfield 3 as he is in that number 10 role. And I know based on Frank Lampard's derby that Mason Mount can drop back into a midfield 3 and play as one of those. So maybe the solution is that that Mount drops in if we're really hurting for depth instead of playing out on the left wing, assuming that Callum's healthy or something like that. So I think there's a lot of different combinations, but we clearly don't have the depth without Ruben and without N'Golo that we'd prefer.
No, I think the depth's okay. If you're thinking that Mount could drop in, Barkley does a decent job there. Kovacic, Kante, Jorginho. I mean, I think that a lot of teams would be very, very jealous of that. I know Man United would be jealous of that, absolutely. Arsenal would definitely be jealous of Chelsea's depth in midfield. So maybe not Man City, but, when you're talking about some of the other top 6 teams, that absolutely, they're great players. I think that, I think Lampard's starting to believe in 4-3-3. Like, a lot of people missed that Frank Lampard played 4-3-3, not only against Liverpool, but also against Leicester. Now, I think that We all got our kind of team lineup graphics wrong and stuff, all of us in the media. But, when you looked at the game, it was Mount on the left and it was Kante on the right of Jorginho. And it was very similar to Sarri's way of playing, with the two sort of left and right sided midfielders pressing very high up the pitch. I found that very interesting. Now, Mount is so capable in so many positions. Like we said in the last pod, left wing, he played great. The fact he moved to position at the last minute, did great there. Number 10, he's absolutely comfortable as a number 10, which is a very difficult position to play in. And then you've got him, comfortable in the left midfield role particularly, which I think that we'll see him play there a lot. But I think Ruben will be undeniable when he comes back, absolutely. As long as he comes back in decent shape, Ruben is a star. I think he's probably better than Ross Barkley in the long run. And I think Ross Barkley is a very decent player. And I agree with Nick as well that he's a great number 10. I think that's his best role. I think that maybe, we're going to see guys sink or swim in the midfield as well. I think Jorginho is loved by Frank Lampard, and I think he's done quite well to begin the season. And Kovacic had arguably a man of the match performance against Norwich. So I think competition is there. And I think that's important because I think Kante is struggling for fitness right now. And I think that might be a trend we see, especially if, he becomes... he stays like such an important part of not only Chelsea's team but France's team. So Lampard's gonna have to find a way to drop Kante, leave him out just from time to time to give him a rest, because I think he needs a rest this season. He's played 4 years in a row, summer tournaments, so many games. This guy needs a rest. He's human after all. We're seeing the first injury problems he's ever had in his career, and I just hope that Chelsea don't run him into the ground. We saw Liverpool running Fernando Torres into the ground a few years back. I think Alexis Sanchez has been run into the ground over the years. And it can really hurt a player in the long run. So you do need to protect your superstars. And N'Golo Kante is the superstar. And I think Chelsea's midfield depth is going to be very important to protect Kante's long-term future. And he's a huge asset for Chelsea.
Well, really quick, Dan, Jorginho also has a ton of miles on him as well. I mean, both of these guys have played so many minutes that we need to develop, kind of backups for them in case of injury, right?
Yeah, I definitely think that the benefit of having a Kovacic is that he really can deputize both for Kante and for Jorginho. We saw him have the opportunity to do both. We're seeing a little bit more of that clinical forward passing from him, maybe not some of the same over-the-top balls that Jorginho has been able to provide, but I do think, whether it's going to be a challenge to get all of the best players on the pitch for Chelsea when everybody is healthy. And that is a great problem to have for Frank Lampard. To have a selection headache would be a very positive thing, because right now there's not as much of a headache when you can't pick N'Golo Kante, when you can't consider Rudiger as an option, when Michy is not integrated enough to be a consideration within that first team squad. When Callum is back healthy, like Frank is going to have selection problems. And that is a very, very positive thing, because it's going to be difficult to pick between Mount, Ruben, Kante, Jorginho, Kovacic. Like that's going to start to cause a real problem. And maybe you see that diamond four where, Jorginho's at the base, you get Kovacic and Ruben, and then you get Mount at top. And so there's going to be a lot of flexibility. It's going to be trying to figure out what's the best system to put the best, 10 players on the pitch that aren't named Kepa on, in the attack and moving the ball forward appropriately, who can handle the high press. So I definitely understand where everybody's coming at. I think we definitely want to hear what your thoughts are. Do you think there's going to be some rotation? Do you think there's going to be some massive changes when it comes to midfield? Everybody's healthy. And when everybody's healthy, who do you think that starting midfield grouping or pairing is? So tweet at us, Instagram, Facebook, Discord. We'd love to talk about it more. We're going to take a very, very quick break, and we'll be right back after that to talk about substitutions, to talk about Willian. We're talking about the defense, talking about the Mbappe fund that we've been affectionately calling it, Nick. But quick break. We'll be right back. All right, quick break. Done, dusted, over. Now we're talking about substitutions. So there has been some thought. We got a question from Nikhil on our Discord server saying, are we getting our substitutions correct? What's worse in your opinion, tired legs or constant mistakes? My question should we have not taken off Barkley instead of Pulisic or Tammy? So Nick, as you're kind of looking at that, how are you feeling about the substitutions that Frank has been making over the past couple of games? A lot of it feels forced in my mind, but I'd love to hear how you're thinking about maybe just the Norwich match and then kind of comprehensively about subs from Frank.
Yeah, I think there are probably a couple of pieces on this. First being that I think Frank's options are relatively limited due to kind of health and just overall early part of the season. So anyway, I think that's kind of one piece of it. The other piece is that I think his subs have been relatively surprising. I mean, we got such into a rhythm last year with Maurizio
Kovacic
Sarri.
for Barkley for Kovacic.
Exactly. That we kind of knew what was coming, before it actually happened. So that's kind of an interesting piece to me. There have been games where I thought Pedro, should have been the first sub based on, his, just not playing as well or looked leggy or looked injured. And he's lasted the full 90. N'Golo Kante lasting the full 90 after playing 120 minutes against Liverpool midweek was really interesting. I don't know if there's necessarily a rhyme or reason yet to the subs. I think the Tammy for Giroud or Giroud for Tammy made sense yesterday because Tammy was kind of fading. But it's been kind of interesting to see his pattern.
Yeah, he's definitely more tactically, flexible than Maurizio Sarri. So, it all begins with the training ground, really, substitutions, because he's got all these different systems he can use now. He's not Maurizio Sarri, so he can play 4-2-3-1. He can play a midfield diamond. He can play 4-3-3. That massively changes how you use the players, and it makes makes the choices different. Sarri would do 1-for-1. Barkley for Kovacic. That's because he's just slotting guys into roles. They know exactly what they're going to do, and they do it. But Lampard will look at the opposition and he'll say, "Oh, I need this right now," and people can't really guess what he's going to do because guessing Lampard's lineups are a nightmare now. You just can't do it, because he's seeing things that we don't see as well. He's a great coach, and he can he's looking at what the opposition do, and that dictates. Now, have I been critical of Lampard's substitutions? Not really. Nothing too strange for me. He usually brings on a striker if he needs a goal. He's called upon Willian when he was chasing a game against Leicester. It was a bit too gung-ho for me, a bit crazy the way the game went. I think Willian probably isn't up to speed at all yet, and maybe even tactically he doesn't really know what he's doing in this system. But Lampard turned to him in that case. I think that Frank's very pragmatic, though. He's kind of, when he's chasing a game, he goes for it. He really will go for it because he'd rather lose a game, you almost feel, than draw. He'd rather lose a game and really go for the win. I think that's the Chelsea mentality, and I think that's what fans want to see. They don't want to see a guy conservative, like resting on his laurels. So I think that's going to be quite exciting for Chelsea fans this season. Maybe it's not going to work out. Maybe he's going to go too crazy. Maybe he's going to push too hard. But Chelsea will push, and they will have the desire and passion, and they'll fight for every point, and they'll fight for more. Even if they're struggling in a game, they'll fight to win. And I think that we're going to see really exciting substitutions like that. But I think we'll see more. We'll see more when he's got more options. Like you said, it's not been great for him, and I'd like to see what he does with Michy. See if he goes to a front two at any point. It'd be interesting to see if he can win a game by a tactical swing like that. That could be a huge change for a team to defend against two strikers instead of one. We saw it in pre-season, and it's quite exciting to see a manager willing to take those risks. But I think we're going to see all these kind of things develop. And I think with Pulisic coming off, I think one of your listeners was complaining about that, but I think that's a conditioning issue. We're seeing that he's not lasting the games very well, or at least not sustaining the level. He has a great first half and doesn't sustain. And I think that we'll see Pulisic complete more 90 minutes as the season goes on.
Yeah, he's burned bright, Dan, to start, but maybe burned a little too bright, where the endurance isn't quite Premier League level yet.
I definitely think that's going to be a conditioning situation. I think, again, one of the other questions we got was Harry kind of asking about Pedro being replaced by Barkley instead of Willian. I think that comes down to a conditioning issue as well, is that Willian has only gotten a short number of minutes so far because he came in after preseason was effectively done. So he is trying to get up to speed. I don't think we'll see him start a match until after the international break. It just wouldn't make sense for me to play him in a starting position next week unless Mount is unavailable, because what we saw in this match with Pulisic and Mount is that they're capable of playing in that front three effectively, getting us goals, and we should have hopefully a better chance to get Sheffield than we did against they might be a little bit more conservative than what we saw with Norwich. So I think ultimately it really is going to be about how healthy can we get these guys, and when they are healthy enough, the real question is going to be is who forces the conversation, who makes it really, Nick, makes their case with their opportunity, and Willian's going to have to do that as well.
Willian, Callum when he's healthy, Pulisic, Pedro, Mount, Barkley. I mean, those are all front three options, behind a striker that, I think are going to be battling. And, based off of what we saw, from Willian in the last match, and even in his brief substitute appearance against Norwich, he's going to have to really go and earn that number 10 shirt this year. I mean, it's not just there to be had. I think, there's a lot of matches, to be fair, and you're going to have to play a lot of different combinations of those players to make it through a season that's admittedly going to be incredibly difficult. But, I mean, you're going to have to, if you want to start in the Premier League week in and week out, you're going to have to prove it. And I'm excited to see who kind of rises to the occasion.
Definitely interesting about we talk a lot about the number 9 shirt, but the number 10 shirt this season is going to have a lot of added weight that comes with it. Naz, how are you feeling just what you've seen with Willian so far? I mean, I do think it's a little too early to judge him due to conditioning, but how are you feeling about him rising to that shirt in this season from what past seasons have looked like for Willian?
Yeah, I think based on the past, I think getting lots of goals is beyond him. Maybe he can get a 10-goal season. 15 would probably be his best record, in all competitions. So don't expect Hazard number of goals. He won't get to 20. It's not possible. Can he contribute? Yes. Obviously, he's a great counter-attacking player, great energy. But yeah, he was terrible against Leicester. Absolutely panned by a certain section of fans. We've come to expect it, really. But he's a likable guy, big personality, very positive. He might be a transition year for him to bring Callum through, who's just coming back from injury. He's still very young, only 18 years old. So that might be what his season represents. And if it does represent that, then it's fine. He's had a great career for Chelsea, and everyone should be thankful of what he's contributed down the years. He's been good. Now, what Willian's problem is a problem for all the wingers. Can they score enough goals? They're dangling the carrot, saying Eden Hazard's left. Somebody get the goals from wide areas. And somebody needs to step up and do that, because we don't think the strikers are going to get a huge amount of goals. Even if Abraham really fires, 20 goals would be an unbelievable season for Abraham. And that means that maybe a winger needs to get 20 goals. And it's going to be very hard for any of them. I don't even see Pedro getting 20 goals, and he's a great finisher. I think Pedro does so much defensive work that he doesn't score enough. He's just such a hard-working player, absolutely battles for everything. But he needs to give a little bit more in behind, a bit more focus on his running, because, I think that almost takes away energy from his attacking point perspective. And I think that somebody needs to step up. And the number 10 shirt, we thought Callum might take it, and he might be the guy who emerges as number 10 next season. And if he scores, he's almost got the highest goal potential for me. Looking at him last season when he did play, he didn't play a lot, but when he did play, I was like, this guy is dangerous every time. Finishing's pretty good as well, and gets assists. So I think that he might emerge as the winger, the real number 10 almost, who sort of contributes the goals that Chelsea really need.
All right, well, let's flip the script a little bit and talk about defense. With Waz asking the question, is the solution to our problems at the back as simple as getting Rudiger and Reece back healthy? And I think, Nick, it is probably more than just that, but there is some excitement about getting to see Reece James fight for a spot. Azpilicueta mentioned him this past week, and then Rudiger also getting healthy is another positive, but I don't necessarily think it's enough, but you can correct me if I'm wrong.
We haven't seen Reece James play a senior match for Chelsea. I mean, I'm really excited for him. I think that he will bring a lot of speed and tenacity. I mean, if you watched any of his highlights from Wigan last year, he was their man of the match, very frequently, and I think he, will bring a lot to that position, especially in terms of competition for Azpilicueta. But I mean, I think it's just kind of a little too much too soon for a guy who we haven't seen suit up for the club yet. So that's kind of point one. Point two is that Rudiger, while I think probably our most stable defender last season, in a season that surprisingly we didn't actually give up that many goals, I think is coming back hungry and is seeing kind of some off and on solid performances from either Christensen or Zuma, and thinking that he can probably cement himself as a starter, potential captain material in the future. And I think he's probably hungry for it, and we've seen him do it in a Chelsea shirt. So I don't think these are the only two pieces of the puzzle, Naz. I think it's a system that needs to be refined and practiced, and that the midfield needs to gel with the defense more than they have in the early going. But I think those two additions probably don't hurt.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. I think one of the biggest misconceptions I kind of read online is that people think that one defensive change can, make a team defend way, way better on a hugely different level. That defending's an individual task when it's not. It's a team, it's a team sport, especially in the defensive phase. It's a case of structure. It's a case of tactics. And we've seen problems with Chelsea so far in those areas. So I think that some of the players have been harshly panned for the defensive performances. But yeah, when it comes to the changes, I think obviously Rudiger's got the highest pedigree of all the centre-backs that Chelsea currently has, but Rudiger's still not a world-class player. He's still not as good as Virgil van Dijk. He's never proven himself at that level. He's never proven himself at Laporte's level. So he's got another level to reach. Now he needs to push on. He needs to take the experience that he's got and show people that he can command this defence that, Chelsea defence doesn't have a lot of experience, especially if you're talking about dropping Azpilicueta, which, a lot of fans are. I know Reece James is hugely popular fan base. It's great. We're all really excited about him. So young, unbelievable season Wigan, absolutely sensational. But when we're talking about this Chelsea squad and you're looking at the players, looking down the list of all 25 players in the squad, Reece James is the least experienced by far. And Reece James has played at the lowest level out of all of them. Derby County got in the playoffs last season. Wigan barely survived in the Championship. That's a huge difference. Wigan Athletic is a really small club, really, especially at the moment. So those achievements are massive, but this is going to be a massive step up. Talent, Reece James has got it, but we expect him to need some time to adapt, to bed in, to get up to the pace. Looking at Christian Pulisic struggling to adapt from playing from Bundesliga and Champions League, and he's still struggling to adapt to the Premier League pace. So Reece James is going to have that. Physically, he is great, but he's also come back from injury as well. So look, we're really excited about Reece, but I think some of the hype's been over the top. It also means that other players aren't getting enough hype as well. Fikayo Tomori, he's a very talented player as well. He's played at a higher level than Reece James, and he was Player of the Year at Derby County, which was a better club than Wigan by a long shot. So it's great that he's got a shot, and I was really not a fan of Zappacosta, to be honest. Not that I don't like him, as a person, or I think there's something wrong with him. I just think that it was a panic buy and that he didn't really play that well for Chelsea. I think his best game was probably against Eintracht Frankfurt off the bench last season, which shocked us all. So Reece James deserves a chance to develop. He'll be a huge asset to Chelsea potentially. I know England are looking at him as well, so he's on Gareth Southgate's radar, just like Mason Mount is, and just like Tomori is, and just like Tammy Abraham, who's already played for England. So I think that he's not going to be a game changer straight away, but if you're talking maybe in April, Reece James has wrestled that shirt off Azpilicueta, but I don't expect him to wrestle it off him in September, October. No way. Let's get him in the cup games. Let's see him play some easy games at first, and then we'll see what he's really made of.
Quick heads up for everybody. Dan's audio broke a little bit here, so just jumping in to pose up the question. Essentially, Dan is trying to say that Chelsea has saved a lot of money, so what are we going to do with it?
Might give us enough money to go out and buy Mbappe if we wanted to. Does it happen? We don't know, but we've been joking about it. And Will was asking, maybe instead of an Mbappe fund, should we talk about a Koulibaly fund, Nick? And maybe with his age and the fact that we will probably never have a good deal with Napoli again, probably isn't going to happen. But in terms of what Naz just said about Rudiger, best pedigree, but he's also not a Virgil van Dijk, is that center back area one of the ones that if you had the money right now that you would prioritize for Chelsea?
Yeah, I mean, you look at the midfield, you look at the wingers. I think we're doing okay there once everybody's healthy. I think we have some real quality in there. I think it's striker and probably if there's a Van Dijk-esque player out there at center back that is going to completely change the makeup of your defensive structure, then yeah, I would also highly consider that. And it's not to say that Zuma or Christensen or Tomori or Rudiger can't raise themselves to that level, but there is a pretty significant difference to when Liverpool started to really achieve something, and that's when Van Dijk came into the side, and then obviously they developed much like we're doing with some of our young players, they developed Robertson and Trent Alexander-Arnold alongside of him. So I think there is a possibility that could be the play. Certainly I'm a little bit more worried about striker right now, personally, Naz, but I think a top quality A+ defender would also very much interest me.
Yeah, those are probably the areas that they might look to. But I think, this season's a case of you got a transfer ban. Prove yourself. Prove that I don't need to make that signing. Prove me wrong. I think Christensen. I always saw him as a player that was potentially world class as well. When he first broke through at Chelsea, he came on loan from Mönchengladbach, playing Champions League, looking absolutely class, winning Player of the Year as well at a Bundesliga team. Comes into Chelsea, starts really well. Everyone thinks he's going to be world class. Now it kind of tailed off a little bit there, but there's still potential in these guys. There's still hope that he could maybe reach a higher level than Rudiger. So there's hope, but. Yeah, those are two areas, striker, centre-back. And I think that what I'd like to see from Chelsea in terms of transfer policy, Liverpool have to be an example for what to do. Like you said, they brought through some of their own players. They had space to bring players through, but then they sort of go, okay, like we're making a choice now. This is our weakness. Let's throw all our transfer budget on one or two players. Just absolutely nail down a really big superstar. And maybe it's not, Chelsea signed 5 players in 2017. They signed Zappacosta, who I just criticised, Drinkwater, who we'd all criticised, Bakayoko, who we probably all criticised as well, who's going to leave the club, Morata, who failed, in my opinion, and then Rudiger, who's done well. So they shouldn't be doing those kind of transfers. And I think that, if they're planning in sort of January for a signing in the summer, that's the right way to go. And going big as well. Dream big, go for the best possible player you can sign. Don't care about the money. Get him in, and then sort of let the youth come through in the other spots, because the youth is really good, as they've already proved so far this season.
Well, you've also seen, Dan, that the youth and combination of Frank, Jody, Joe are bringing a lot of spirit to the team as well, right? It's about kind of reestablishing who Chelsea are as a club, and bringing that kind of exposure to, even a big signing. Let's say you go get a Mbappe, or you go get, someone, big on the defensive side. When they come into the club, they should know immediately that it's a hungry club, the academy's coming for you, and that there's a ton of competition. There's a winning spirit mentality here, and I've loved that so far, even though there's only been one win under Frank so far.
Well, it's also about not becoming a feeder club to other clubs, right? Frank talked about that when he came on board, that he wants players to come and want to play for Chelsea, not thinking about Chelsea as the next step before they go to someone like a Real Madrid or a Barcelona, that we really don't want to be, a tier underneath. playing for the elite within Europe. We want to be part of that elite within Europe once again and be a place that people see as their, maybe their forever club that they want to be at, for the majority of their career. And if you can convince someone like an Mbappe, like a Jadon Sancho, like other players, that this is the place and the proving ground to do that, and a place that you can be at for your entire playing career if you're a contributor, then we will have done so much in terms of rehabilitating the club's image, not just for supporters, under Frank, not just for the way that we're viewed in the Premier League with being able to actually grow youth talent, but in the way that players thinking about coming to Chelsea as a advantageous move, as a move that they want to make. Naz, I think that, to me, again, it's just, there's so many things that can go right this season. If we rebuild this club as an identity, as a place where players want to come to play because they see it as a side that competes, that would be a monumental shift forward heading into an ability where we'll be able to sign players again.
Yeah, I think so, and I think you're right. Yeah, the atmosphere and the sort of perception of the club is really important when you're making those transfers. I think that that's been too negative almost in recent seasons. If Chelsea are competing with, say, Juventus for a signing, there might be a case that Juve are the positive side and Chelsea have got this negative narrative all surrounding them. And why would you come into that? And it's great. The youth actually provide real positive narrative. You got Mason Mount absolutely playing with the shirt, loving it. So's Tammy Abraham. The dressing room, you go into the Chelsea dressing room, these guys are really grateful. You go into the training ground, you watch a Frank Lampard training session. Tammy Abraham is loving life. He's got a smile on his face. And now, if somebody like Jorginho, say he got miserable and was fed up and started bring the mood down, then he kind of looks silly because there's guys who are getting a shot, loving life, and then you've got this experienced head who costs 57 million, and he might be complaining, and it kind of looks dumb, and it kind of looks, these guys from the academy will always be grateful, and they'll always show the way to be, and they know what Chelsea's all about. And now you bring another guy in from the outside, and they'll look at these guys and they'll be like, wow, they love playing here. I love playing here. And it can be as simple as that. That's what, this mentality is, team spirit. It's very important. I think maybe that's something Chelsea have lacked in recent years and lost ever since John Terry left the club, is that, you had somebody who totally could identify the club, set the example, felt so comfortable in those surroundings, and just made everyone else feel more comfortable. Because you got to look at football, and it can be an insecure world at the time. There's a guy trying to steal your spot. There's also, a manager might get sacked and it screws over your game. So those kind of things can happen to you anytime, and you're really fearful. And maybe you're scared of the media for whatever reason, evil guys like me writing bad stories about you. There's all these things playing in your head, a lot of pressure as well, to perform. Maybe fans turn on you. And the fact that Lampard's creating this positive environment, a sort of safe haven from everything. You hear the way he speaks. He's like, don't worry if you lose. I'm really grateful you guys are doing your best. It's just a positive energy about the place, and that's so important. And I think that will help attract good players, and the academy stars are part of that as well.
Well, if you weren't excited for what comes for the remainder of this season and what can come afterwards in the coming summer, just listen to Naz's answer that question right there and repeat multiple times throughout the season. We might have to come back to that and replay that clip in future episodes just as a good reminder if things do start to turn a little bit in the wrong direction for a moment. But we will get out of there on that one on a load of positivity. Naz, thank you again so much for joining us, giving us a ton of time on your Sunday afternoon. We appreciate it.
Yeah, you've got to enjoy the wins, guys. So stay positive, and it's great to spend time with you guys on a positive note, because it could have easily been a bit of a downer.
Well, beer's on us when we're in London, for sure. You know that.
Loving it.
Well, yeah, we will look forward to toasting, hopefully, multiple Chelsea wins with you while we're over. And but Nick, again, thank you as always. We know Brandon couldn't be here for the second part. Bit of a slacker.
Yep. Good talking, everyone, and we'll see you very soon.
All right, Chelsea fans, on that, until next time, you know what to do. Keep the blue flag flying high. Keep the blue flag